My friend, welcome to the world's best kept secret podcast, a podcast that brings you exclusive interviews from experts all over the world with life-changing work that you didn't even know existed. I'm your host, Prima Jobs, a partner for those that are ready to take their life-changing work in front of those whose life or business depends on it. Please follow or subscribe for more. Welcome back. Today I am super excited. Pull your stool, pour your drink, and just get closer because today is an exciting day. I have my friend Julia Myers, and Julia speaks about generational wealth. Julia is a founder of Generational Wisdom, the leading expert on how to talk to kids about money. And she's spoken to wealthy families in the hundreds on how to change their lens around money and begin gaining control over their generational wealth in the end. Julia has spoken at several noteworthy events like the White Coat Investor Conference, the DLP Elite, and the Prosperity Retreat. She's also been featured on top podcasts such as Your Financial Pharmacist. Julia believes that every experience can be a lesson with the right perspective. Her work is really simple. She helps wealthy families that struggle with entitlement. Those that have been lucky to work with Julia have seen clarity, discernment, and confidence around how to take charge of their own generational wealth, no matter what the kids think around entitlement and all of those things. Julia has created thought leadership around this topic. And today I'm really hoping that we can dive in so you can see if her work is something you absolutely need to follow or help you point at someone who will find Julia's work an absolute game changer in their life. Julia is a friend, and I personally love how she shows up. I love her abilities to be a great presenter, but most of all, her level of humility is what really draws me to Julia. And today I'm excited and honored that I finally got Julia in the studios, and I am just excited to get in. Julia, welcome to the show. I am super honored to have you as my guest today.
Oh, well, Prima, thank you so much. What a incredible introduction. And I am honored to get to, speak today about what I'm just so passionate about. And also as a friend, I'm excited to see the success of your show and the success of just the work that you do. So thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. I said so much when I was bringing you up, but I know that you're a person of like succinct, to the point. Prima, what are we talking about? Could you tell the listener exactly what you do in a few words? Because I know I said a lot there.
Got it. So to the moms out there, to that mom that is struggling specifically with pressures of raising kids today, I've got you. We're going to use wisdom and common sense to help you navigate what it means to raise kids today.
Amazing. So, Julia, what's the problem that we have today? What is the problem that is present that makes raising kids harder than it has to be?
Oh my goodness. The problem is kids these days. No, I'm kidding. It's not us. It's not the kids. It is the pressures that just surround us as parents. Our own pressures we put on ourselves to show up in specific ways, whether it's as a professional woman, at work, at home. We have so many pressures. And the pressure to have things be better for our kids than what we had growing up. So the pressure comes internally, it comes externally, it comes from social media. And now you layer in that there's a different generation with different access to technology, different problems, different ways that you interact, different values. And so overall, one word problem, pressure.
Pressure. Amazing. When I first got to understand your work, I remember asking you, and you said, Prima, those are problems that you probably may not have, but I can guarantee you these are problems for us. What's the problem that the mother that I know you speak to wealthy families. And so what's the problem that wealthy mothers experience that the ordinary person who doesn't have as much wealth doesn't even know exists? Because some of those problems that you solve, I was like, really? Like, is that a problem? So I want you to tell the listener what problem you solve that most people don't even know it exists. Because I didn't know it existed when I started talking to you.
Yeah, so the problem really is, and it's hard to sometimes see or
Mm,
sometimes realize, because your
mm,
intention as a mom is to protect your kids,
mm,
to help them flourish, to help them grow. So your intentions are all in the right spot. However, the impact that sometimes we're having, especially raising kids in affluent suburbs, they're going to private schools, they're being raised in this bubble. We got rid of a lot of the hard things
mm,
that I struggled with growing up as a kid. The balance between needs and wants, or the ability to generate wealth in the first generation. You know, most millionaires don't inherit their money. Only 20% of millionaires inherit their money. And for those that have generated financial independence or enough wealth to be worried about, what we find is we are not, as parents, doing a great job talking about money,
mm,
passing on the values of money, and just how do you manage it in a world that says you're never going to measure up or you're never going to be enough. And what that leads to is the root of that cause is entitlement. So the kids that are being raised are actually just being in the bubble that we've created for them. So we're actually our own problem as parents sometimes, especially when it comes to values and wealth and the pressures of keeping up with the Joneses, is what we say.
mm. That's interesting. So what you're saying is entitlement is a problem that, are you saying it's a problem that we parents may be contributing to and not know it? Or educate me a little bit about entitlement and what, in your opinion, you believe is causing a lot of kids to be more and more and more entitled or feel more and more entitled, or should I say spoiled? I don't know if that's the right word to use, but kids feeling like they deserve or they must get, or that mindset in a child. Educate me around how we as mothers might have either contributed to that, or where does that come from at all?
Oh, such a good question. You're a great question asker, because I had to unpack this all for myself. I had to figure out the time that we were standing in line. My 16-year-old had saved up money to buy a car.
Mm,
And what she did is saved it up. We matched half. I thought we were doing all the right things, right? She showed value in her hard work. We show up at the DMV, so the Department of Motor Vehicles, to get
mm,
her vehicle registered. And she saw the huge line.
mm,
And she looked at me and she looked around and said, "Where's the fast pass line for the DMV?" And I said, "Excuse me, this isn't Disneyland. You can't just buy a fast pass."
mm,
And that moment, I realized maybe it's entitled, maybe it's spoiled. What I realized is I created someone that is used to always being in the fast pass line
mm,
without even realizing that that upgrade or that purchase was something that not everybody had, which then translated to my daughter, stories always shared with permission, bless her heart, that it translated into that was the world she knew. That's all she knew.
mm,
So I could see it as, oh, she's so spoiled. I
mm,
could see it as, oh, she's so entitled. She's
mm,
expecting to get the best of the best all the time. And
mm,
when I really unpacked it,
mm,
it was me as mom that created that environment by maybe not talking about some of the things that money can buy or some of the experiences that money can buy, but also the reality of being an adult in this world. There's not always a fast pass in life.
Mm.
And that was so important for me to just sit with and reflect. And I'm sure that you have a story like that too, that you just kind of like are banging your head against the wall a little bit and saying, where did I go wrong? What happened? And I think it's important we start talking about and normalizing those
Mm.
conversations, because
Mm.
there's a lot of kids that are expecting the fast pass in life,
Mm.
and they think that money may solve that, or they think that their status may solve it.
Mm.
And really, it comes down to what are the values of the family, and how do those choices and how do you make choices that transition you into adulthood to be mature. So part of it is growing up as a kid, and you
Mm.
just learn things through experience and through the school, as you say, and I love how you say this, hard knocks. And sometimes as parents, when we talk about entitlement, we say we've kind of created this monster and we need to start talking about it.
Mm. That's really good. I know that the work you do helps parents get in control or get a hold of their own generational wealth. But I wonder why it's very important to raise money savvy kids. Why is it important for the kids to understand that there is not always going to be silver and gold on their plate? Give me the education around what we are doing as a disservice to our children if we don't get in the books and say, hey, look here, this is just because you have the wealth doesn't really mean that your children will have this soft life. And so, as parents, why is it important that our kids get the skills before they need them to be in the real world and thrive or survive through the storm that they may never experience in our homes? Why is that important?
Oh my goodness, such a great point. And the data is where I like to start. My background as a healthcare professional, I'm rooted in the data, and it's really scary. There's actually a phenomenon called the short sleeves to
Hmm.
the shirt sleeves generation.
Hmm.
So the data says that the wealth that I have created, that I am working so hard for my kids, 70% to 80% will be gone or lost in one generation. So my kids are going to spend 70 to 80% of it. And what's left of that in the next generation, so my grandchildren, less than 10% of my wealth or family's wealth will be left. So 10% of the time. So in 2 generations, we went from affluence and what we're going to call wealth. Wealth is not just being rich, but wealth of time, wealth of freedom, wealth of choices. That's why
Hmm.
they call it the short sleeve generation,
Hmm.
that in theory you're on vacation, or in theory you're kind of kicked back. And then in 2 generations, 90% of your legacy and your line has to go back to the long sleeves of going back to the office and working. So that data is really scary. And it surprised me because that is the American dream, right? Is you work hard
Hmm.
for the kids so that they don't have to. Well,
Yeah.
what we find is there's 3 reasons that the next generation, three
Hmm.
reasons that that money is gone. And there's lots of data around it and science, but basically, first one being mismatched expectations.
Hmm.
So kids are raised with, you know, car service, airport lounges, eating out when they want, everything's paid for. The bank of mom and dad
Hmm.
is plentiful.
Hmm.
However, when they get out as adults, young adults, middle-aged adults, they realize that real life is expensive,
Hmm.
and they are spending their way through their affluent status back into working class. And I don't want to say working class as a bad thing. I want to say working class in a way that they didn't realize that that was what life was like. And they've
Hmm.
not found their passion or their alignment of
Hmm.
creating value in this world. The second one is so basic, but so important, and
Hmm.
the loss of generational wealth, financial literacy. So the ability to understand what money is for, where it comes from, how you
Mm,
spend it.
mm,
Some people use the B word called the budget.
mm,
And so I call it a spending plan.
mm,
If you're not telling your money where to go, it's gone. And
mm,
so financial literacy is not a core value in many of the school programs today. And so I've spent a lot of time identifying and finding different ways to teach financial literacy.
mm,
And then that is just the second so important piece of why generational wealth is gone. And
mm,
then the third one has to do with the values and the value alignments and the expectations. So
mm,
when you're talking to kids of wealthy families, often you will find the parents say, I want this to be easy for you. You use the word, I want a soft life for you earlier.
mm,
When you hold up a mirror and I look at what I've been through and some of the challenges that I've had, I kind of realized it's the hard stuff that shaped who I am. It's the hard stuff that got me where I am. And it was the questions I was asked growing up. What do you want to do when you grow up? Who do you
mm,
want to be when you grow up? Those sorts of questions, I think without clear expectations, parents are letting the kids kind of run the show.
wow.
And the kids are naturally, I mean, what kid doesn't want to eat candy for breakfast, right?
Mm,
We're all going to want to eat candy for breakfast. And so as parents, we can say no to those things, but often it's harder to say, oh, that's a financial choice that's going to be hard for you or uncomfortable for you.
mm.
And the expectation of the kids is, well, you're going to fix that for me too, right? So expectations, financial literacy, and just overall, just purpose and value in life, I think are the three really big reasons that
Mm.
generational wealth is lost.
I wonder if you would be open to diving a little bit of your story. I know you told us a little bit about the scenario that happened with you and your lovely daughter, but I wonder if you would be open to diving in a little bit and kind of getting us to a point where Julia Myers wasn't Julia Myers and how you kind of started to even do this work and everything that you think is important for the mom listening to go, oh my God, maybe I need to pay attention to this right now.
Oh, awesome. I will give you the abbreviated version
Okay.
because there's a lots of twists and turns because
Mm,
every mom out there has a story. I'm
mm,
speaking to you that has this identity of being what we call a cusper. So you're a millennial,
mm,
but you are now maybe married to someone in Gen X or you're married to another millennial. And how you look and see the world is shaped in different ways based on the generation that you're in. So the generation I was raised in, and I think of the first experiences I had with money, was
mm,
rolling coins with my dad at the table, and my hands smelled of the money, the coins that just stink of cash, right? I remember going to the bank, depositing money, and I remember my dad telling me, work hard, go to college, and you'll retire at 65. And that's what I'm going to do. And
mm,
as a millennial growing up in a um, childhood being raised by what we call the boomer generation,
mm,
um, that was what they did is they worked in the same job forever until they were 65. So I thought that was my path and God had different plans for me.
mm,
So my path started with going to university, getting my doctor of pharmacy degree, buying a house, and basically running in that, what I'm going to call the hamster wheel
mm,
of trying to keep up with everyone else around me, trying to impress everyone else around me. And that takes money. And I didn't get into crazy amounts of debt. I was always raised very fiscally responsible. And I always started saving and investing early. I had this just interest in personal finance or finance, as my MBA teacher taught me. And that led me to kind of this crossroads of as I am working and
mm,
as I am building wealth, what does that really mean? What does that mean to me? And so when I, about 3 years ago, was advanced in my career, directing a large team, I found myself with a spontaneous retinal detachment. So lost my vision in my right eye and what happened was I said, okay, I'm going to need to go in for semi-emergent surgery. It wasn't an emergency, it was emergent.
Mm.
And that changed my whole perspective. Physically, literally, I told my admin assistant, clear my schedule for 2 weeks. I'll be back in the office. And I never got to go back, not in the full capacity, not in the full way. And I didn't know that at the time, but it was such an identity challenge for me that everything I had worked for could be gone in like a second. And so I started really reflecting on what is important and why is it important. And it hit me the minute that going into surgery, before you go in, you have to sign lots of consent forms and lots of documents that basically say, if something happens, are you wanting to be resuscitated? Are you wanting to be, all of these things that come with end of life and surgery? And I really started thinking, am I ready to give all of this wealth to my kids?
Mm.
Are they ready to receive this as a gift and a blessing and
Mm.
not a curse?
Mm.
Because the data says if you're winning the lottery, it's probably going to be gone unless you have the foundation and the habits surrounding it. And
Mm.
so for me, when signing my name, that was the moment I was feeling called to say, what are we doing this for? And if we're doing this for the kids, why am I hesitating right now? Probably because my career was in question, my identity was in question, everything in what I had thought was my life's work was all in question if I didn't wake up. Well, I did wake up and I'm on the other side. And
Mm.
as a mom of 5 kids, we're a blended family, ages 8 to 20 right now. I have spent the last few years getting really clear on what are our family values? How do we live them out? How do we talk to our kids about money in
Mm.
relatable, real life ways? So if you're a mom out there and you're thinking it might be too late to start this conversation, it's not. If you're thinking it's too early to start the conversation, it's not. I say you can start talking about money as soon as the kids learn the concept of sharing. When something isn't yours, you have to share it. And that comes very, very early. So that was basically my story and how I kind of pivoted to figuring out from the inside out and the outside in that vision of what I thought my life would be like and the calling that I have now inside me that says, we're going to make this a bigger story. We're going to change our perspective, both literally and physically, to say what really matters and how do we get in alignment with that. And that means that I get to spend a lot of time talking to people about how does your spending align with your values? How do your decisions with money align with your values? And
Mm.
so that's a little bit about how I got to be on your show today.
I really love what you said. But what jumped out for me was, are we blessing our children with the sweat and hard work that we have created when we are gone, or are we cursing them with that? Because it could be you're gone, and the generation after generation can transfer that gift, or you're gone and it's a curse, and 2 years later, your children on the streets begging. Like, that was what jumped out for me, Julia. I do know that you've created a lot of work around parents and children and the discussion around money. But I need for you to clarify, what is it that you actually speak about? Is it the discussion about money with children, or is it the parents and being in control of their generational wealth, the clarity around comfortably getting back that control? Give me clarity around the work that you have created in your thought leadership, because I want to dive into it, but I need the listener to get context of, like, what is this? What's the context, or what's the radius around that work now? Maybe tomorrow it can grow, but like right now, what are you focused about educating the parents or the children about?
Oh, such a good question. And it took me some time to really unpack the
Mm.
layers of the onion. Just like you said, is do you start over here? Do you start with the kids? Do you start with the parents? And
Mm.
really, I developed in my framework, kind of 5 steps that are from what I'm going to call the very, very beginning to your financial influences. We start with our financial influences. So reflecting on how I was raised and how I have a feeling maybe of some scarcity and those sorts of questions that we really dive into. So, what are the influences? How did your family and your upbringing influence what you think about money, what you feel about money? How did your generation? And this is where the data, and I really geek out on different ways that people think about money and the influences, the society that you were raised in. So were you raised in the suburbs? Were you raised in, more of a rural community? That different ways of demonstrations of wealth show up in different ways. And then culturally, I was raised with looking at my next door neighbors and their houses and the cars in their driveway. And now my kids are being raised in ways everything's on Instagram and on the internet. So now their comparison pool just got so much bigger. So I really need to think about those financial influences. That's kind of the first step. And then as we go through steps 2, 3, 4, and 5, the end result that we're going for, because I always like to say, where are we starting and where are we ending, is financial mastery. And when I think of a master, I think of someone that can teach it to the next generation, that can live it every day. That doesn't mean it's easy. That doesn't mean you have all the answers, because our jobs as parents is never done. Never done. Even after they're married and now you're the grandparents, I'm not there yet, but everyone, whether they're living or not, is always that parent. So I don't want anyone to feel disillusioned that there's a destination that says, once you cross this threshold or you're worth $1 million or whatever, your job is not done. That's not mastery. The Olympics are going on right now. And I think of all the athletes that set world records 4 years ago that have now broken those records again. That's mastery. They didn't just arrive. So the journey that I take people on starts with the influences and then ends with really that level of mastery and what it takes to then maintain it. So those are kind of the steps, and there's many steps along the way. I'm happy to dive into those as we have time, but just thinking about your story with money is the way that I like to have parents think. Is what's your first memory of money? Was it abundance? Was it scarcity? Was it, we can't afford that? Was it, potentially some poverty and some real life things? Or was it, I remember when I couldn't buy chocolate milk because I had to just drink water at lunch, or whatever that story is? What the data says, and when I've presented and we've done polls to different groups of people, family is always the largest factor in your influences with money. And then as you mature, there's this point where you can then decide, do I want to bring those influences with me? Or do I want to start to create some of my own influences? So there's this interesting shift when you become a parent. You now are bringing your influences, what you choose to allow and what you choose to maybe create some boundaries around. Your influences as a parent are now the next generation's first experiences with money. Nobody ever taught us how to do this. Nobody really said, here's the textbook of how to do it. And so I always start with grace and support for the mom out there that's like, I don't know how to do this. Well, no, heck no. There's no way you'd know how to do this because you've never done it before. We've never raised kids of this generation in that way. So I want to get rid of the illusion that you were born knowing how to parent. Like there's like physical instinct, but man, parenting takes a lot of work, a lot of development, and a lot of learning. And it always starts with reflecting on your own experiences, what you want to bring to the next generation, and maybe what you want to leave behind.
I have a lot of respect for parents because it's crazy. The most important things in life, no one ever teaches about. You get married and somehow you're expected to figure it out. There's a baby in your hands, you leave the hospital, and somehow you're supposed to just figure out how to raise this baby with the morals and everything. And so anyone that has done parenting, has been through parenting, has seen their children grow, I think that's a massive, massive thing that they've done. Julia, now I'm excited about this process. So the first thing is like, okay, who is running the show of what I think about money? Understanding my influences, understanding my conditioning, understanding my patterns, understanding where I learned money from, understanding the stories I have around money is where it starts. And it ends at a place where you either decide to stay in the default, or whether you decide that you're consciously going to select the influences around money for you going forward. So for the cautious parent who is like, oh my God, I so want to choose my influences, and they are at a point where they're now going, I wonder what the influences are. My family was so poor and this happened and this. So now they are rolling and going, oh my God, I wonder what influenced how I see money, how I reach money. And they are wanting to get that financial mastery where everything you understand about money is something you've consciously chosen. I wonder if you would love to take a moment to take us through that process step by step so we can take notes and feel like, oh my God, we can go do this right now. Some of it, maybe not all of it.
Yes.
Of it. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So I always like to start with asking, and I'm going to put you on the spot.
Yeah.
What is money? When you think of money, what is money? Let's start there.
When I think of money, I think money is an exchange of value.
Very wise. Not everyone answers that. And what's really interesting is depending on who you ask and what age they are. So when I was presenting last month to a group of like elementary school kids, they were like, money is the plastic thing.
Wow.
And I said, what? The plastic thing? They're like, yeah, that's where it comes from, right? Not money is cash, money is coins, but money is the plastic thing. And then I asked to the back of the room where there were some young adult leaders involved. And I said, well, what's money to you? And they're like, stress, anxiety, worry. And so in one room, maybe 10 or 15 years in between the elementary school kids that I was speaking with who said it's a physical thing, the way Prima, you said it's an exchange for value, to the emotion that money often evokes. And I just always say, let's start with what money is not. It's not a feeling. It's not an identity. It's not a measure of worth, because you are so much more worthy than whatever that number says in the bank account. And when you come from places that are scarce, maybe it's poverty, it's hard to sometimes see that or feel that. But what's really hard is when you have enough money that you can realize that everyone has more than you. So there's a certain level of affluence or comfortability. We call that the middle class, that you realize, holy cow, I don't have what they have. And your worth and your value can never come from comparing yourself to other people. And so when we talk about money, we just think, what's the most valuable purpose? The MVPs of money. I teach this, that the most valuable purpose, these three things, if you can't recite them, how can your kids recite them? So saving, spending, and sharing. The three most valuable purposes of money, the three S's every kid should know. And I challenge you, mom, to ask your kids, what's the most valuable purpose for money? And get them to answer that and get them to recite that. It's not a feeling. It's not an identity. It's just a thing that's exchanged for value. So once you have an idea of what money is and what it isn't, I think you got to learn the rules of the game. Things like time value of money, things like compound interest, things like assets and liabilities. Those are like boring words, but they are so fundamentally important. If you want to drive, you have to learn the rules of the road, right? If you want to interact socially, you have to learn the rules of social engagement. And there are rules with money. And the best rules are things that allow you to grow your money and things like interest. So interest is the reward you get for having money held somewhere. That reward is sometimes paid to what we call the creditors. That's interest. Or interest is paid to you as an investor, that over time your money grows, and compound interest. So the second big pillar that I teach through, once you understand like the stories about money, we now need to learn the rules of money, financial literacy. And you don't need to have a degree. You don't need to pay a lot of money to learn these. There's tons of information out there, but make sure you're taking your information from credible, reliable sources and not something that somebody's trying to sell you. Get rich quick is all over the internet. And the majority of money lost in the cryptocurrency craze was from Gen Z, people that thought they could make a quick dollar. Boomers didn't lose any money in cryptocurrency or any money that they cared about. They might have played, but they didn't lose money. So when we think of the big surges in GameStop and the big market crazes and the run-ups, it's run by people looking to get rich quick and not necessarily based on traditional financial principles and value. So that's a super important second principle.
So stories, rules, and now we're going to 3.
Yes. So number 3 is now that you have this knowledge, how do you align it with what you value as important? And I have every family as an exercise look at not their budget first, but their calendar, because you spend your money often in alignment with how you spend your time. You spend your money often in alignment with how you spend your time. And so when you look at your calendar, can you clearly tell me what you value with how you spend your time? Can your kids tell you? We sit around the dinner table. That's my favorite place to have some of these money conversations, especially with kids of different ages. We say, you know, how does our calendar reflect what we value as a family? And then you work backwards and say, is there a gap here between what I really want it to show and what I'm really doing? And as you start to recalibrate your time, you get to really recalibrate your vision and your trajectory. Then you shift into how do you budget then for those values and those priorities? Once you're really clear, and I say that not to be punny because I have a visual impairment, but in your knowing in your heart, as a family, what do you value? And can everyone articulate that? And then it makes making choices on your time and your budget so much more clear. I didn't say easy. It makes it more clear. There will never be enough time to do all the things you want to do. There will also never be enough money to do all the things that you want to do. And so when talking about getting clear, we talk about when you can buy anything, what do you buy? Because you can't buy everything. So when you can buy anything, got to get clear because you can't buy everything. And so understanding those values. So for our family, I'll get a really practical example. Love. Love is a huge value in our family. If that's showing love to our neighbor, showing love to our family, whatever it is that that means to us, we are expressing love in what we do. The second one that we do is learning. We love learning as a family. Individually, we're doing new things, we're doing new challenges, new experiences. Learning is so, so important to our family. So we spend time and money there. And then third is travel. As a family, we have traveled to so many different places. And yes, we're that big, crazy, loud family in the airport that's laughing and having a good time together. How is that possible? Because we talk about what we value. And when we're in that zone of what we love, it comes easy and it's fun. And yeah, you can be jet lagged, and yeah, you can be stuck in an airport. And yes, the kids said, I can't believe the lounge is closed. I have to eat regular food. And I was like, oh my goodness, oh my goodness. So I have not figured this out completely. And I want to encourage the moms that are stuck right in that messy middle that I'm here with you, because every day there is something that surprises me and then doesn't surprise me at all. So those are our 3 family values. We say that our schedule reflects love, travel, and learning. And we say that our budget then reflects love, travel, and learning. And all the rest kind of starts to fall into place. So that is the exercise when you're right there in the messy middle of step 3. What do you value? And then do a gap analysis to say, what's your budget telling me that you value? And how do you reconcile the two?
That's really good. So we have the stories, understanding our stories, the ones that we're telling ourselves about money and where they came from. we have the rules. Like we have to understand the game. If you want to play, you understand the game. And then there's alignment, ensuring that your time and money are being spent in alignment with your values. Is there 4 and 5 or are they 3?
Yes, no, number 4 is my most favorite
Mm,
because this is the step that you're going to be in for a long time. This is the step that when you think about running your first marathon or your first race or something physical,
mm,
you're like so excited that you did it and you're so proud, right? So in step 3, you're like, I did it. I got my values. I got really clear on what I want to do and I'm closing the gap. And then life happens. And then
mm,
it rains on the morning of your marathon. Or for the Olympics, the triathlon, they had to postpone it a day because the river wasn't clean enough.
mm.
Can you imagine like training, 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 and then all of a sudden things get disrupted? That's called
Wow.
life.
Mm,
And we as parents have to navigate life in a way that shows our kids this is how you do life. This is how you manage adversity. This is how you make decisions.
mm,
I say that the illusion is that there's hard and easy. There
mm,
is not hard and easy in life. There's hard and harder. And my kids
mm,
hate it when I say that because it's so true. There's hard and harder. You can do hard now, but it's harder later. Or you
mm,
can do the harder thing now, but it's less hard later. It's
mm,
never hard or easy. And when you get really clear on that, you have to get to the underlying thing of, okay, well, how do I make those decisions when it's hard? And
mm,
so pillar number 4 is really around discernment.
mm,
That is a huge muscle that you have to develop as a parent first, and then you
mm,
develop it in your kids, and then you hope and you pray and you practice that
mm,
they will then get into financially independent, financially mature adults.
mm,
They can't do that if you don't do that first as a parent. So discernment is a quadrant that I've trademarked called the generational wisdom discernment quadrant. So
mm,
imagine you've got 4 squares. You at the very, very top right is where you want to be. And at the very, very bottom left, you want to start asking questions. So across your horizon or your horizontal
mm,
axis from left to right, in our quadrant on the far left, we have scarcity.
mm,
And then we move and move and move towards the right in a continuum style fashion
mm,
to abundance.
mm,
So scarcity to abundance. And then vertically from bottom to top, vertically from the bottom, we're going to start with consumption. I am consuming resources. I am consuming. And then as I slowly move up that continuum, up, up, up towards the top, now I'm at creation. I'm creating value. I'm creating resources. And so in that quadrant, you get to decide where and how you're making a decision. And that has helped me so much in making decisions and understanding, just labeling where it falls,
mm,
understanding your motivation, understanding that there's pros and cons of every quadrant. Sometimes we just have to be consuming, but we're
mm,
doing it out of an abundant mindset. That's where I put travel. I'm spending money, but I'm doing it in a way that feels abundant and aligned with me. So
mm,
there's that quadrant. I'm going to label that with a sailboat
mm,
because it has nothing to do with generating assets, has nothing to do with creating wealth. However, it creates value that's aligned in that state of abundance. Super important. However, if you flip it to the other quadrant and
mm,
you're looking at, I'm creating wealth and I'm creating value, but I'm doing it out of scarcity.
mm.
Quick picture Scrooge McDuck. Have you seen that commercial?
No,
DuckTales?
no.
He basically swims in his physical bank of money and never spends a dime. And he
Wow.
has a scarcity mindset because he's so worried about all of the little things and all of the little expenses. So he
Mm,
has wealth, he has riches. And I say that that's the middle class mindset. I really challenge the mom out there that says, I work so hard, I have a good income, and I'm living paycheck to paycheck and I have nothing to show for it.
mm,
That's a scarcity mindset, while your bank account might say something different.
Wow.
How do you move from one to the other?
Mm.
That's where financial mastery, that very last pillar, comes into play. And the other two quadrants are consumption and scarcity. That's where I would put payday lenders. That's where I would put car payments, car leases. That's where I would put buying fancy handbags and jewelry when your motivation is to do it because you think it's going to make you feel better. When you're
Mm.
spending money as a compensatory mechanism for something, you're making up for something. You're feeling both scarce and you're consuming.
Mm.
That can be a really tough hole to get out of. Consumer debt is at an all-time high. Credit card debt is at an all-time high. You can't get into the abundance and creation quadrant when you're stuck in that consumption quadrant. You have to consume some things, right? You have to eat, you have
Mm.
to live. How you do it and how you approach doing it has to be aligned with what you value. And where we're trying to go is that top right quadrant where we are in abundance and
Mm.
in creation. That's where I think of the figures in the world that you haven't heard of. There may be the millionaires next door. If you've
Mm.
read that book from the 90s, it was wonderful. I'm rereading it right now, actually. And you're thinking of, I'm living in abundance. I'm creating value. I'm creating assets. I'm maybe providing housing that's affordable and workforce housing. Or maybe I'm running a small business that employs people that pays, and continues to pour into my community. And so that top right quadrant is where we want to strive to be in. And
Mm.
anytime we're making a decision, we want to run it through the quadrant. What's our motivation? Where are we coming from? And we got to practice. Got to practice. It takes
Mm.
rep after rep, school after school, hard knocks after hard knocks to say, why am I making that decision? And that is the discernment quadrant in step 4.
Wow. I think so. We have like the way that I've done it is like a circle, and then I have like scarcity, consumption, and then I have like abundance, creation. And the way you're explaining it is like it's not like you're not in any of them or either of them. It's like you can be in all of the places, but the goal is to consume or do anything, but everything is like, am I doing this from a place of abundance? Or am I doing it from a place of fear, a place of scarcity, a place of shame, a place of guilt? So with the abundance, what I'm saying is more like, what's the motivation for the thing? Is it abundance or is it scarcity? Is it a low frequency? Is it a higher frequency? That's how I'm getting it. I do not know if that's accurate. That's how I'm kind of seeing how you're.
That's exactly right. And
Wow.
as a mom,
Mm.
I want to make choices in that way. And then I'm grounded when I tell my kids no or when I'm saying yes. So I can know very clearly that that's a boundary that I have. So practically, let's apply this. We drive a paid for car. We share one vehicle. I don't really drive anymore, so there's a little bit of benefit there. And we don't have a fancy car. We
Mm.
have a paid for high mileage vehicle that was, commonly called Crusty Dusty. That was the name of our vehicle. And so for us, we didn't value cars. We don't value cars. We don't value car payments. We park in hospital parking garages that get dinged up all the time or grocery stores. I have kids that will be teenage drivers and are teenage drivers. The last thing I want them doing is driving a vehicle that's worth as much as some people's housing. That's crazy. The average car payment in the US today is around $800. $800 for a car payment. That's just crazy. So that's a practical example where we are choosing to say no to a new car. I don't care that in the pickup line we have the oldest car in the line.
Mm.
That doesn't matter to me. That doesn't matter to our family. So I'm able to hold that boundary without even hesitating to say, yeah, that doesn't matter. But you bet I'm going to post when we are in Italy as a family and we're in a experience where we're making pasta with an Italian chef and we're baking bread all together. That just gave me goosebumps.
Mm.
That's the goosies. When I'm aligned with what my financial choices are,
Mm.
that might not match what other families do. That's what our family does. And I'm teaching my kids through the discernment quadrant, how do you make those decisions when you have enough money to buy anything? You can't buy everything.
do you buy? All right. Stories, now rules of the game, alignment and values, the discernment quadrant. Do we have number 5 or is it 4?
Number 5 is your mastery level. When I think of a master, I think of a teacher. I think of a wise mentor. I pull a lot of what I talk about from the stage of generational wealth as just the money, but you need the wisdom to manage it. So this is your mastery. This is your wisdom. These are your, how am I teaching what I value to other people? Abundance is all about thinking of a waterfall. It's not how do I collect it and consume it and arrive at it so that it's mine. It's a waterfall that will just always be there. And you've probably met these people in your life that are just pouring into other people all the time. When you have financial mastery, you can do that. So one of the questions I ask my kids is, I'm interested in foster care awareness, and I volunteer in a program that I'm mentoring kids in foster care. That is so important to me. That takes my time, that takes my money, and I love it. And that isn't always aligned with what my kids want. My kids are like, we don't need more kids. We don't want a foster kid. I'm like, no, we're not going to be a foster family. We have 5 kids. However, I turn the question to them and I say, what is going to be your charity? What is going to be your foundation? What is going to be your legacy? And I have one that loves music, that wants music to be accessible to everyone. Wow. I have one that is a chess player, master chess player at a very young age of 12. And so he's like, I want everyone to know and play chess. And then my youngest, who has hearing loss, says, I want everybody to know about how my ears help me hear, just like people that wear glasses can see better. So that to me is that financial mastery. When you have enough money that you can buy anything, you also have the responsibility to give, to share, to pay it forward, to be that vessel of goodness in the world. One of the questions I asked at the table several years ago was, what do you guys think it means to be rich? And the teenager said, being rich is bad. Being rich is being selfish. And I said, well, tell me more, because every good parent knows you never just answer their question and walk into the mind zone field. You always ask another question and you say, well, what do you mean? And they said, well, yeah, rich is just flashy headline. Rich is just like what you see on the outside, but it has nothing to do with what's on the inside. And that to me just really stood out, that the Gen Z and now what's coming into the workforce right now is the Gen Alphas. They're seeing past that illusion when they have the foundation and the values. Not everybody sees that, but my kids see that. And I want to share that with more families. I want to share that with more people, that to be wealthy means to be abundant, to be generous. With much wealth, there's much responsibility. And we can do more the more we earn, the more we save. So money doesn't translate to a bad thing. Because again, it's back to step 1. It's not your identity. It's just a tool that helps you serve your bigger purpose. So financial mastery is that last step that I move families from the very, very beginning, starting with their stories, to ending with, what's your legacy? What's your mastery? What are you teaching the next generation? And what will be remembered long after you're gone?
Wow, I love this process. Let's catch up. First thing that Julia taught us was like stories, like what's forming your behaviors and beliefs around money. What are the stories? Where do they come from? And are they things you've consciously chosen, or have they been passed on to you from the last 10 generations? That's the place to start from. 2, for any game you play, you gotta get to learn the game. So what are the rules of the game and how can you get yourself educated? Alignment. In a time where you can do anything, you can't do everything. So what are you going to do with your time? That's going to be harder if you don't know your values. So the first thing is like, what are the values? And that really helps spend money and time in alignment, because we know what we stand for. We're not doing something because the kids want it. We're not doing something because the neighbor is going to do it. We're not doing something because we have to. We should do it. We're doing because we want to, because we love doing it, because it makes us feel happy. So I feel like the alignment piece is the movement from shoulds and have tos to want to. So I'm doing something because I want to do it, because it's aligned with my values, because it makes me happy. 4 was the discernment muscle, which was my favorite one. When you can do anything, when you can buy everything, what do you buy? You don't end up having everything in the house and not even having space to breathe. Like when you can do everything, what do you do? When you can buy everything, what do you buy? That muscle to discern and say no, and have no guilt, no shame accompanying that. I love that muscle. Julia has trademarked that, and hopefully we'll be able to put it somewhere or maybe on her website where you can go and look at the quadrant. I feel like that was very powerful because it's the knowing of a decision and why you're making that decision. What I understood is that there is abundance and there is scarcity, and we're always making decisions from there. And your job is to run every decision in the filter of, well, is this abundancy or is this scarcity? Or is it fear? Is it shame? Is it guilt? Is it, why am I making this decision? Do I have to, should do, fear, guilt, shame, all the things? That's what she's calling scarcity. Or is it abundance? Because I want to, because it makes me happy, because I value the thing. That's a discernment muscle. And when you have plenty of money and you can do anything with it, really discernment is important for your sanity as well. And the last one was mastery level, where what I understood there is that really when you have abundance and you're wealthy and you have more than most people, it becomes a calling on you to share, to bless other people, to be just a vessel that can make another life better. But you don't just do it out of obligation. You can't do it from a place of being rich, which rich she described or wealthy as coming from the inside, not necessarily the material things that are outside, but coming from the inside and feeling like you're pouring into other people because that is meaningful to you. That is aligned with your purpose. That is aligned with your mission, which is really beautiful because I really like how she said that, because a lot of people tend to look at riches as the toys and the cars, and all of those things are great. But I think true wealth is the wealth that comes from within, where you give because you feel like you have enough in your heart to want to do it because you want to. Julia, I want to ask, what is the benefit of going through all this? Because it is not the path of resistance. What is the, how has this been life-changing for you? Why should any mom spend a lot of time and money to master this? Because I feel like we need that question answered. It's possible that someone might go, oh, I wonder, this sounds like hard work, but I can't see the pay. I can't see the price. And I wonder if you can help me break it down. Why do we need this? It's not the easiest thing to do. Why do we need it?
So when you up level your money mindset, that's kind of what I'm going to summarize this to be, is you're just up leveling your money mindset. The number one thing you're going to gain is confidence. I didn't feel confident going into surgery that I had done everything that I could, that my legacy would live on after me and be sustainable in the future. Some people use the prodigality as like, I'm worried about what my kids are going to do if I leave them this money, or if I leave them this name or this responsibility. And the confidence, the clarity, the just, opposite of stress. Like when your kids are asking you for money to start a business, that's a very different conversation than your kids saying, I'm going to live in your basement until I'm 30 because I can't figure out what I want to do. And the bank of mom and dad is always open. So I think of abundance. I think of clarity. I think of calmness. I think of marriages that are healthy because you're talking about money in healthy ways and you're aligned.
Mm.
And again, it's confidence. Confidence that you're not going to be that statistic, that your generational wealth is gone.
Mm.
Confident that in a few generations, people will remember the trips you took, the values you had as a family, the foundations you started. There's just something comforting in knowing that
Mm.
what you're doing matters. And when you have confidence that it matters and you have clarity, I would up level your money mindset all day.
Mm. And I love the fact that we get discernment, which I think is really undervalued. The ability to decide and not have guilt or shame following the decision. The ability to see A, B, and you go, no, A, and there's no explanation. The ability to say yes or no, and you don't have to explain to your child why it's a no. I love that clarity of discernment as well as the confidence and the abundance and all of the good things that come with that. Are you, I know that this is going to be vulnerable, but are you able to share with us the changes you've seen in your children or yourself, or even with the people you speak to that have resulted from this shift, this seeing in like a different lens? Like, we would love to see,
Abs-
like, yeah, like the benefit, because I know, like, for you, you've seen that in your children and yourself, but I wonder if it's okay for you to share.
Absolutely. And I think that every good experience can be a lesson, even
Mm.
the hard ones, the different stories that come up. And every mom will have a story where their kids just blow you out of the water with their level of maturity, their level of responsibility. Um, and recently, one of my kiddos was in a little fender bender, and they didn't call like freaking out saying, "What am I going to do? How am I going to pay for it?" They called and said, "Here's the plan. I know that we have a deductible that's $2,500 because we save money on car insurance because we buy old cars and run old cars." And she said that the damage is minor. We're going to get it checked out. I have some emergency savings. I'm going to cover it. I thought I would let you know.
Wow.
How many moms would love that phone call at 20? Their 20-year-old calls them. I have emergency savings. I know what my deductible is. I know where my insurance card is to even look at that information.
Hmm.
And I'm going to handle this. And I thought I would let you know.
Wow.
This is also the same one that had a DMV fast pass line just a few years ago. So I
Hmm.
encourage you that there will be moments that just you can't believe that this is your life. And then there
Hmm.
will be moments that you can't believe that this is your life. And as a mom, those are the moments that really matter.
Hmm.
As a mom, when it's the holiday time and your kids are saying, I want some of my gifts to go to kids that don't have any.
Hmm.
When they're young and they're, 6 and 8 and 10 years old, and they're saying, I acknowledge that what I have is more than other people. And I'm going to celebrate that what I have, and I enjoy my presence and I'm thankful for them. I have an appreciation for them. And I know that there are kids that don't. So how do I help them have something good too?
Hmm.
So at any age, there can be a story, and that can be your story that says, starting with the littlest of things, every Christmas Eve, this is my favorite memory and my last story I'll share. We go out to eat
Hmm.
as a family. We don't go out to eat very often, except when we're traveling. We
Hmm.
don't go out to eat, period. We always cook at home, except on Christmas Eve. And when we get seated, it's the tradition that we leave $100 bill as a tip for whoever's serving us on Christmas Eve. And
Hmm.
the kids light up because the whole time we eat, they know that every time that person's serving us, that they are going to be blessed. And it's, you can see the excitement in the kids as they're sitting there. And at the
Hmm.
very, very end, when it's usually the youngest, because that's the tradition, they give that to the server and say, thank you for being you. And I hope this blesses you this season. And
Wow.
that just gives me goosebumps because those are the family traditions and the legacies that are going to be passed on well after I'm gone.
Hmm.
And being able to give and pay forward, not in a consumption, but a creation. I'm creating value. When we buy rental properties, the kids are saying, what family are we housing now? How are we helping the community? What are we pouring into? Who are we employing that cleans the house at our rentals? Things like that. So those are some of the like real life examples that I have. And of people that I've worked with, they've told me, they're like, I've said no. Like I thought that getting my kid a credit score was the most important thing when it comes to money. And I've realized that credit scores aren't anything we've even talked about today. And there's so much more to be talked about. So those are some of the things that I can just speak to from my personal experience, from my speaking experience. Everyone has a story with money. And when we stop and really listen and start talking about money, we can really start to up level our money mindset.
I'm very curious with the Julia that was signing her papers, getting an eye surgery. Was it a surgery? And the Julia now, what has changed? What are you happy about? Because when you started, you said, I got to ask the question, am I going to be leaving my wealth behind as a blessing and a true gift? Or is it going to be a curse? If the same scenario, God forbid, was to replay today, or if today was the day that we would never see you again, what would Julia, what would be the thought in your mind? Would you still have that question, or would you have a different question, a different wish? What would be in your mind if today was the last day that your kids would ever put their eyes on you and you would never see them again, and they had to have the wealth anyway? What would Julia think
Oh,
about today?
I think the reality that we all need to say is that tomorrow's not guaranteed.
Mm,
Today's not guaranteed.
mm,
And when we approach life from that perspective of both living today and living for the future, that confidence that comes that anytime I get on an airplane or anytime I'm traveling or really just doing life, I would feel comfortable. I would feel ready. I would feel empowered that
mm,
my kids are able to make those choices. And there's some legal things that are in place to help them make good choices,
mm,
because we all know that young adults don't always make the wisest decisions. And yet at the same time, there's just that fundamental trust and that fundamental belief that's there now that wasn't before. That if something were to
mm.
happen today, tomorrow, 50 years from now, that they're going to be not just okay, but they are going to be a blessing to the world because I am a blessing to the world.
Wow. I love that place. I know you don't do a lot of things. I don't know, you don't even do things because people pay you. You do things because you want to do them. You want to contribute. You're answering that from your calling and you want to have this available for everyone. Are there any ways you're available if anyone wanted to bring you up and invite you to speak, get coaching? Are you open to being hired in any capacity?
Absolutely. I love being a guest on podcasts
Mm,
and I love talking about my stories and sharing my experiences and walking with families, multi-generational families. So if that's you, if you want to up level your money mindset, the best way is to get on the phone with me and we can dive into your unique situation. Everybody's money stories are different. We don't do it in a group environment very well. You know, that's just the way we are, right? It was in our culture, we don't talk about money openly. So I
mm.
want to invite you to have a private personal call with me. We can talk about your biggest struggle right now when it comes to your money mindset. And then I can point you in the right direction. If that means that I come speak, if that means that I point you to some resources or some curriculum or some coaching, I want what's best for you. And that starts with a single conversation with me.
Just so we're clear, are they having like a link to your calendar or is it a phone? Is it Julia? Is it Julia's assistant? Is it free? Do they have to pay? Because I want to be able to put in the show notes, but I also want them to have clarity around, are they expected to pay for the call? Is it free? Is it Julia on the
Mhm.
phone? Is it the assistant? Is it an application? Give me context around the call and who is qualified to take the call and what you expect from them or where they need to be to take the call.
Got it. So if you are worried about how much money you're leaving behind, there's not a set amount. If it worries you, come talk to me. It's a free call. Go to juliamyers.com, MYERS. That's how we spell it. juliamyers.com. It says book a discovery call with me. It's a free call. I might not be able to help you, but I promise I can point you in a way that will get you to the next right step in your journey, wherever you are in your money journey. So if you have enough money that you're worried about what the kids are going to do with it, come talk to me.
Amazing. The biggest and grandest and most generous thing that anyone can do on this podcast is share this episode with one person that you know in your bone marrow would find this life-changing for them. You may not be the person that is worried about the money. You may not even have enough, but you may know someone that is struggling. Their kids are, and you know those kids that you buy a car for and they're crying because it's not the car they wanted. Who do you know that is going through so much pain that they need Julia's message? Who do you know that is worried what will happen to their money when they are gone? What will happen to their kids when they're gone? Who do you know that you think, man, if this person died today, these kids would be on the streets in 3 years? Who do you know that you love and you want to be blessed by Julia? The biggest thing you can do for us is share this episode with them in their private space and invite them to have a listen. I guarantee you have the ability to change their life just by sharing this message. And no, you don't have to share it on your social media. No, you don't have to share it to your list. You don't have to share it anywhere, just in their private space. That message on WhatsApp that said, I saw this video and thought about you. That small message in their private space where you talk to them every day, can be even SMS. And say, I had this and I thought about you and your children. That is the gesture that will build this platform and that will get the messages out there in the right hands of those whose lives it can change. And so that's my challenge to you. That's the best thing you can do today. Support this message. And of course, secondary to that, wherever you are, grab your app, subscribe, review, rate, comment, all of the things the platform is telling you, because that is how we help the platforms help us. And so I am excited and happy and grateful that you, my guest, and I get to build this platform, one human being at a time. Julia Myers, we are winding up, but I would love for you to give us your final words of wisdom so you can send us off.
Oh, Prima, it's been such an honor. Thank you so much. I am going to leave you with generational wealth without the wisdom to manage it is playing the lottery. Don't leave your legacy to chance. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Julia Myers, for pouring into the community and for your priceless wisdom. It was my honor and pleasure having you on the show. And to you, my listener, I hope that this was a blessing to you, and I'll see you very soon in yet another episode. Have a great day. That is it, my friend. To listen to more exclusive interviews like this one, simply go to the World's Best Kept Secret podcast.com and select interviews based on preferred topic.